Welcome back to the channel, guys. In this video, we're going to be doing a super easy, cheap upgrade to our 5th gen 4Runner. It is going to make our suspension work better. It is going to make it more comfortable. We are going to be upgrading the bump stops on our 5th gen 4Runner. All right, have you ever been off-roading? Perhaps you're driving down a forestry service road or just an off-road trail. The trail condition looks good, so you start to give it more gas. Now you're flying. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere comes this random huge pothole or pit in the road. It's too late, you try to slow down, so you brace for impact, boom, you hit this thing. It sends a shockwave up through your suspension, through your frame, up through your seat, into your spinal cord. And for the next 30 seconds to a minute, you're hyper aware of all the sounds that your vehicle's making. You're absolutely terrified that you've blown something up or snapped something. The reason why this happens, and especially on our 5th gen 4Runner, is because our bump stops are absolutely horrible on these vehicles. This is what Toyota gives us on the 5th gen 4Runner for a bump stop. This bottom part is metal, and this is completely hard rubber on the top. This stops metal on metal contact, but it doesn't really do much to stop that impact on our frame as our suspension comes close to bottoming out. The reason why we actually have these is to prevent our suspension from coming out. It's like the last little bit of dampening that we have, but these are pretty pathetic. On more premium model vehicles, you'll get a bigger bump stop or a more progressive one, like on the Lexus, but on the 4Runner, this is what they give us. So a while back, somebody discovered that the rear bump stop for the 4th gen 4Runner actually fits the front of the 5th gen 4Runner. So this is a great economical choice for the 5th gen 4Runner. This is like $40 and it's made by Energy Suspension. So this is what we're going to be putting on the 5th gen 4Runner today. I'm going to be showing you guys the most budget option, but it works great. Everybody that's used these loves them on the forums and that for 4Runners. So it's a nice choice. I mean, you can spend as much money as you want on these things. You could spend $500 for just the front bump stops if you go to something like a hydraulic bump stop. But you know, you don't need those. If you were planning on jumping your 5th gen 4Runner or racing across the desert, then you might want a hydraulic bump stop. But for what I'm doing, this is going to be more than satisfactory. This is going to give me more dampening, and it's progressive dampening. You can see it gets thicker as it goes down. I've actually already tested this in the front, and it was absolutely incredible. I was able to put a camera under my vehicle so you can see actually how the suspension is flexing, and this is absorbing those impacts. It does, you know, compress nicely, and it was way smoother than the stock one would have been. We are also going to be replacing the rear bump stops. So this is what we get for the 5th gen 4Runner for the rear bump stop. It also is very hard rubber, doesn't really give much, has no kind of progressive dampening in it. So we're going to be actually replacing this bump stop with this one right here. This one actually fits the rear of the 5th gen 4Runner, and this comes out of the Lexus GX 470. As you can see, us peasants with the Toyotas get this bump stop, and the people who spend the extra money for the Lexus get this one. You can see this one's more progressive, it'll absorb more, it's longer, more rubber, so we'll be replacing the rear with this. I'll leave part numbers in the description below. I did go with off-branded ones, so these will run you about, I think about $40 for the set. If you get the OEM ones from Toyota, expect to pay double that, but still way cheaper than the aftermarket bump stops for the rear, and these are really nice. All right, so let's get these installed on the 5th gen 4Runner. This job shouldn't take you very long. I'd say 20 minutes, you know, for each side if you're pretty quick with tools and jacking up your 4Runner. Let's jump into the video though, and let's get these installed. All right, guys, here's all the tools you need to do the job. It is super basic, super simple. We have a socket and extension to get our wheel off. We have a torque wrench to get it back on properly. We have some large channel locks here. They do need to be quite large to grip onto this factory bump stop. You're gonna grip on the bottom here and twist it, so they do need to be large. We have a 3/8 ratchet here, an extension, a 12mm socket, and an 8mm hex bit socket. I got this off of Amazon. I will leave a link in the description to where you can get this. This fits in perfectly. It is kind of a bit tight to get in and put that aftermarket bump stop on, but this works out perfectly. So I'd highly suggest you use this, and you'll use that with a 3/8 ratchet. So step one, loosen all those lug nuts with your tire on the ground, then jack your vehicle up, then finish removing those lug nuts, then remove your tire. Place your tire under the vehicle and also use jack stands for safety. We will not be going under the vehicle, but this is just good practice. All right, so here's our factory bump stop. This is what we're going to be removing right here. What you might want to do is take some WD-40 or some sort of penetrating oil and spray in here the night before or the day before, and just let it get into that bolt. It can rust up in here a little bit, and it can make it this difficult to remove. So Soaking this ahead of time might make your job a little easier. I've already done that. What we'll do is take our channel lock pliers here and we will grip on to this part. And then we're gonna turn it. There we go. All right. So here's what you'll get with your energy suspension bump stop. You'll have the bump stop, the bolt, and you'll have this kind of washer or spacer. This washer or spacer will just go in the bottom here. So push that in. Our bolt will go up in here. And this is where the 8mm hex socket comes into play. So we will tighten the bolt up through the bottom like this. And this is the best method because you don't have a lot of space in here to work with. Some people will try to get an Allen key up there and try to tighten that. You can't get a lot of torque. This is the best way of tightening this up. Now your socket, your hex socket will go in a little bit. It's not completely flush with the bottom, but as you're tightening it, it's enough that you can actually still get a lot of good torque on here and get this down nice and tight. Let's get this installed now. All right, I've got my hex in there and the bolt sticking straight up. So find where it's gonna thread on, move it around. Once it catches, start turning that hex. So there are no torque specs for this bolt, but just get it on there tight. And if you want, you could also use blue Loctite to ensure it does not come off. If you need a little extra extension, you can just kind of get the socket kind of more on the end of your ratchet and feed it up and then tighten. But yeah, all of a sudden you'll hit a point where you really can't tighten it anymore. And that's when you know you're good. I will mention if your 4Runner is stock and you're finding this engaging just a little too soon, some people have removed just a tiny bit of material off the end of this just to give them a little bit more articulation before this kicks in. All right, now you can get your wheel back on and torque it down to factory spec. Then we're ready to move on to the back. So remove your back wheel, jack your vehicle up, fully get that wheel off, and then we'll have access to that mount. All right, so with our tire off, here's our mount. This one's pretty dirty, so let's try to clean this up a bit. All right, now let's spray a little WD-40 on these. These are a little rusty. That'll just help them come out better. And then we'll use our 12mm. Great, and so you can see how this bolts on. The bolts are here and the more tapered end is on this side. So we'll install the new one the same way, reusing this hardware. All right, so these are side specific. So make sure you look at the part numbers. I'll leave some information in the video here below and in the description, but they are side specific. So you gotta use the right part number on the right side. For this one, make sure that these edges here without the bolt holes are facing inwards. The longer side is facing inwards. Place this one up. And just like with those front bolts, you know, a little blue Loctite doesn't hurt to ensure these don't come out. I couldn't find any torque specs for these. Torque them down, you know, fairly snug. Now when tightening these down, it can be a little hard to get your socket up in there. This is where the extension comes in, just for that final tightening. All right, so you're probably looking at this and going, what the heck, this one's on a bit of an angle. I have tested this and this does line up perfectly with the axle. Especially when it gets to this spot, it's gonna be perfectly in the center here, but it does seem to contact right here. So as the axle comes up, it's more over here, and as it compresses, it moves forward a little bit. So that's where our old bump stop was, and that's where our new one is. So you can see, once it reaches this part here, it's right in the center, but it does line up perfectly. All right, so that's the install. Now we'll get our tire back on, and that completes the job. All of our bump stops are now installed on the 5th Gen 4Runner. It's a nice, very affordable upgrade. All right, guys, I hope you found that video useful. Those bump stops are a nice alternative to some of the more expensive options, and they do seem to work really well. If you guys did find the content useful today, please like and subscribe. I hope to come out with a lot more videos, and I do appreciate your guys' support. I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye now.